بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله وكفاه والصلاة والسلام على رسوله المصطفى وعلى عباده الذين ارتضى ومن بهداهم اهتدى وبآثار أهل المدينة اقتفى وبعد فسلام الله عليكم ورحمته تعالى وبركاته. أهلا وسهلا بكم يا شباب في هذا الدرس الذي سنأخذه من كتاب أبي حفص ابن الملقن سراج الدين ما يسمى تذكرة المبتدئ وتبصرة المنتهي. Now, I'm going to explain. We have begun Usul Hadith in the last lesson. What I want to do, what is the purpose? We give a quick objective. I want us to have some familiarity with the terminologies, the technicalities, the nomenclature of the Hadith world. So when people categorize Hadith, what are the words that they use? Why do they call it that? What is the definition or the criteria for a Hadith to meet a particular category? And what are these categories? That's what I want us to have some understanding of. I want that to be a means to us studying Hadith. In this where we are doing this is not a means to an end. Although maybe in certain places or in other, I'm not sure, the circles, people may be studying and then enhancing their knowledge upon Usul Hadith or Mustalah Hadith and taking it layer upon layer upon layer, and then maybe looking at Rijal and doing all sorts, and that in itself is a science. But for us, this is a means, and a relatively brief means to an end. So we want to understand what are these categories, get enough, but also taking into consideration, look, many of the people are not actually like ulama or on that scale, or they're not heading in that direction, so some things may be a bit too overwhelming for them. So let's do this in a palatable, digestible way. So we began previously. The reason I'm telling you that, that sheds light on this not being text dependent. Okay, because it is not necessary for us to be covering a particular book. What is necessary is the notion, the concept, the understanding. So although we did take a look at some of the work, or the previous lesson we took some understandings from al-Doktor al-Tahan in his Taysir Mustalah al-Hadith, but alhamdulillah, we've benefited from there. We're going to now take a look at the definitions and categories from Ibn al-Mulaqin's book. I will just briefly introduce him and go through his book. This is something, it's a lot more swift. It's written quite, I say simply and not simplistically. So it's not simplistic text, it's a simple text. It's brief. It's called a reminder, Tadhkiratul Mubtadi wa Tabsiratul Muntahi, that it is almost a reminder for somebody at an elementary stage. And it is a point to take heed from for those who are at more of an advanced stage. That's what he's called it. Once we've done this, the aim is we can maybe look at another text that I've mentioned where we can have a quick quiz as well, cover the text, the poem, have a quick quiz on what is the understanding of these words. So hopefully if we can cover this today, the whole text, Ibn al-Mulaqin, he says towards the end of it that he finished it within sa'atain. Obviously, in the 9th century Hijri, where or the 8th century, he passes away in 804 Hijri. But during his time, sa'atain probably didn't equate to the sa'atain in our sense, but still, tabarrukan bishtirak al-ism, with the same word, with the same name, if you like, or the same noun, we will hope to, inshallah, if we can maybe complete this within 2 hours as well of our time. Tabarrukan wa imtithal, maybe ta'assiyan, following the Shaykh in his footsteps by doing so. Obviously, he'd probably be thinking, what the hell, if he found out we're going over his book, he'd probably be like, anyway. So, any questions before we do that? نعم، هل من سؤال؟ من سؤال؟ Okay, hal min sa'ali then. Is there a cough? No, no cough either. Okay. Right, okay, Jayyid. Let's, Ibn al-Mulaqin. Anybody know anything about him? I know Doc knows something about him. Ya tabibana, come on. What do you know? Anything you know about him?
He was a very, very well-respected senior hadith scholar, Shafi'i madhaban, and I know that he authored a very voluminous commentary on Sahih Bukhari.
MashaAllah. Good Muslim guy.
Nice.
He's a good guy. He's one of the good guys. I got almost a bit concerned when you said he wrote a voluminous, prolific writer. I almost got concerned. We've heard some of your jarah in the past, but okay. So Ibn al-Mulaqin. Now he is Umar. This is his name. Ibn Ali ibn Ahmad al-Ansari al-Shafi'i. As you can see, we are obviously trying to bring to life the literature of all of the heritage of Islam, not just the school of Medina. For anybody that gets curious, that why do they only stick to Maliki texts? It's just usually because they're just so awesome. But but sometimes we try to include everybody and give, we don't want anybody feeling left out. So this is an awesome text as well, brief text, but by this Shafi'i scholar, Ibn al-Mulaqin, goes by the laqab, or went by the laqab, Sirajuddin. His kunya Abu Hafs Ibn al-Nahwi. He's also known as Ibn al-Nahwi, but he's popular as al-Mulaqin or Ibn al-Mulaqin. The reason he actually had this name is that when his father had died, he and his mother remarried, he was brought up by somebody who was known as al-Mulaqin. And whether that was because of his profession or not, al-Mulaqin is somebody that does give instruction, as in teaches. It could be teaching and things like this, but he became known as Ibn al-Mulaqin through his stepfather. And he was from the great ulama of hadith and fiqh and tarikh al-rijal, legendary scholar of hadith. Asluhu min Adin Ash bil Andalus. So his asal, although he wasn't from Al-Andalus, but his origin, they say he was of an Andalusi origin, although he was born and passes away in Al-Qahira, in Cairo. Okay. They say he authored almost or around 300 texts. SubhanAllah. We hardly get the time to, I don't know if we could ever read as many texts in our life, let alone author them. Anyway, some of his texts, his major works: إكمال تهذيب الكمال في أسماء الرجال، التذكرة في علوم الحديث، الإعلام بفوائد عمدة الأحكام. That's a commentary. إيضاح الارتياب في معرفة ما يشتبه ويتصرف من الأسماء والأنساب. That's a more linguistic work. غريب كتاب الله العزيز, a book explaining some of the slightly more difficult words within the Quran. التوضيح لشرح الجامع الصحيح, his commentary on Sahih al-Bukhari, which has already been alluded to by Tabibuna Abu Musa. All right, a rivalry going on between Abu Musas. Yeah. Abu Musa. Okay. عجالة المحتاج على المنهاج, that's his commentary upon the Minhaj of Nawawi. Obviously you can see his Shafi'i contribution, which we don't hold against him. الإشارة إلى ما وقع في المنهاج. His طبقات الأولياء, he has a book which is in print. al-Muqni' في الحديث, which is also in print. He says that this, he kind of summarized the text we're going through now, we will be going through. He summarized from his Muqni', he says. He has a book called Ghayat al-Sul fi Khasa'is al-Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And that's always an interesting topic, what was specific to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. There is actually a huge or scope for a discussion and debate on what was actually specific to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and what was general. There some matters are discussed and debated. طبقات القراء العقد المذهب في طبقات المذاهب شرح زوائد مسلم على البخاري. Hadithi book, those ahadith, the commentary of those ahadith which Muslim has kind of increased upon Bukhari in. Okay, Sharh Alfiyat ibn Malik, a grammatical text. Now this book of his is a very brief book. They say traditionally كانت تقع في 4 مجلدات in just 4 ورقات, just in 4 simple pages really. It reaches people through a Maghribi script, showing that that's where it may have taken off really, in the Maghrib. It was in the Barnamij of Al-Wadiyashi. Wadiyashi is a famous scholar from Al-Wadiyash, but the books in which people write, let's say things like the ijazat, or they write things like, this is, my collection of asanid and ijazat and stuff like this. Different people have had different names for them over the time. So some people quite popularly call them, they will call them things like, let's say, a thabt, and that's one name for them that you still see around today, the thabt of somebody. The Andalusis used to have a term called barnamij, which, contrary to maybe those who don't know then, you see, because barnamij today is used in Arabic to mean a program. And I must say, traditionally, I'm interested. Like many years ago, before learning this, I thought barnamij was an Arabicized word that wasn't actually Arabic, but it was taken from, I thought it was more of a contemporary word that was taken from like program, like they call it barnamij or baramij, program or whatever. But this is what I thought, until I had a while back come to learn that was actually what the Andalusian used to use. And we're talking like 700 years ago, 800 years ago, when they were writing their collections for ijazat and stuff like this. Okay. Anyway, so that's this book does have a commentary for those who seek it by Al-Imam al-Sakhawi. I'm sure maybe others have commentated on it as well, but Sakhawi's is known as al-Tawdih al-Abhar li-Tadhkirat ibn al-Mulaqqin fi ilm al-Athar. Okay, if anybody's interested. Now, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, wa sallallahu ala maulana Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallama tasliman. Right, he begins with a khutbah, mentions قال الإمام شيخ الإسلام. Shaykh al-Islam is not, many people were given that title by people. It's not specific to any one scholar or so, although it may have become a bit more popular with certain people at a later stage. So he begins by saying, Allahu Ahmad ala na'ma'ihi wa ashkuruhu ala ala'ihi wa usalli ala ashrafil khalq Muhammadin wa alihi wa usallim wa ba'd. So he begins by saying, فَهَذِهِ تَذْكِرَةٌ فِي عُلُومِ الْحَدِيثِ. After doing his khutbah, now obviously we know from the hadith, كُلُّ ذِي أَمْرٍ, any matter that has some importance or significance, if you do not begin it with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, or in other riwayat by praising Allah, فَهُوَ أَقْطَعْ, then it is something which is removed or cut or deprived from rahmah and blessings. Okay, so this is a tadhkira fi ulum al-hadith. It says يتنبه بها المبتدئ, that the beginner can begin, ويتبصر بها المنتهي اقتضبتها من المقنع. He says, I've taken it from the muqni', okay, which I've mentioned before. وتأليفي, that's his book. وإلى الله أرغب في النفع بها, that إنه بيده والقادر عليه أقسامه ثلاثة. So he's saying that the hadith are really, as far as we're concerned, of 3 categories: صحيح وحسن وضعيف. فالصحيح ما سلم من طعن في إسناده. Do you have this text in front of you? No, okay. ما سلم من طعن في إسناده ومتنه ومنه المتفق عليه وهو ما أودعه الشيخان في صحيحيهما. Okay, he says ما سلم, what is sound from طعن في إسناده ومتنه, and from it you get, from this category you get the category known as متفق عليه, which is, what does متفق عليه mean? Yeah, it means the agreed upon, which are the books, the hadith from the Sahihain, from both of them, as in the hadith which both of them have agreed upon. So, what's this definition again? ما سلم من طعن في إسناده ومتنه. That which is sound from any harm or any criticism in its chain and in its content. But what has he not actually elaborated on here? What
Conditions of.
So what else is a condition for Sahih? Because he's summarized it to such extent, that one, that it's not actually, it's quite a strange, definition, that it hasn't covered some key conditions.
You mean like
Ittisal, yeah, so exactly. So, I mean, he's done, the shudud angle, I suppose, is implicit. But really, what were the 5 conditions for Sahih we did last lesson? Ittisal al-sanad, Dabt of the narrator, the precision.
No hidden illa.
Okay, but what else with the narrator?
The righteous.
Yeah, okay, so the adl, the justness, the probity of the narrator, the righteousness.
No oddities.
Then the admu, in Arabic, shudud, the oddities, and the last one.
No illa.
Yeah, no illa, no defects. So these are the 5. What is the what's the poem? أولها الصحيح وهو ما اتصل إسناده ولم يشذ أو يعل يرويه عدل ضابط عن مثله معتمد في ضبطه ونقله. So that's in a poem form, but it says that the Sahih is what is ittisal al-sanad. There is no illa, no shudud, and it is transmitted by people who are just and precise. 5 conditions. To be fair, the rest he starts to become reasonably comprehensive in their definitions. The Sahih, for some reason, he didn't give it a comprehensive definition. But nevertheless, the important thing is that we know what it is. Al-Hasan. Okay. Tell me about Hasan. Anything?
Well, there is some sort of weakness in it, and that's why it's not Sahih.
Okay.
There's something that's dropped it.
Mm-hmm. So it's something, that's a way of looking at it. That's saying it's a weakness. The other way of looking at it is that we're not saying there's a weakness in it, but that it lacks the strength. I mean, it may be just the same thing, but I'm just saying there's another way of looking at it, that it's still good, but it hasn't reached the level of sihha where it should reach. So they say that the narrators may not be as precise as the Sahih narrators. So they're slightly weaker they're not weak. This is what I'm saying. Maybe that's not the best way. They're not as strong or as precise as, for it to be totally solid, rock solid. But at the same time, they're not weak either. So, okay. He says, ما كان إسناده دون الأول في الحفظ والإتقان. What the isnad, the chain, is weaker than the Sahih, or less. He says less than the Sahih in terms of its memorization and its perfection. And then he says that it basically, the Sahih category does cover this, meaning that these hadith, but it goes beyond. So it's like it's got all the conditions of the Sahih. Like the Sahih has all of these conditions, but the Sahih is more imprecision. That's what he's trying to say. Okay, then he moves on to da'if. ما معنى ضعيف? What does ضعيف mean? Weak. Alright, is that you, Abu Muawiyah, with the Arabic? ضعيف. Right, weak. Something that is weak. Right. Give me a definition. What are we talking about in hadith sense? What is the...
So there's a problem with the chain. So if one of the ravis has like memory loss, I mean not memory loss, but is known to not have precise memory.
Yeah, okay, good. What you're saying is it's got a problem in it. It doesn't meet the conditions of sihha. It doesn't. Some people, he's actually said here, ما ليس واحدا منهما, what is not one of the above two. وأنواعه زائدة على الثمانين. He says, and then there's up to even 80 different categories of da'if. I mean, what he's about to go into, what he means is there's different ways of it being da'if. They could be, as Mu'adh just quickly said, memory loss, amnesia. There could be other things, they could, and we'll go through certain things. There could be, you'll see some people lost their memory, like you said, some people lost their books. In this day and age, I suppose, some people lost their hard drive. That's like, or the USB, the phone got stolen. Okay, so anyway, right, so all of these things, that could mean that, damn, there goes their transmission. Because people in the past were transmitting from books as well. They weren't just all walking around like just dons, pure dons of, when they were transmitting hadith, they were writing them down, keeping them at home as well. So they had like books and books of this is what I transmit. Then all of a sudden somebody might have come and, stole their books, or they might have lost their books, or their house burnt down. And then all of a sudden this person who was doing it before, now unfortunately he's struggling. So this is why, and we'll take a look at those people. But anyway, da'if is anything that isn't sahih or hasan. And as, how does the Sahib al-Bayquniyya say? كل ما عن رتبة الحسن قصر فهو الضعيف وهو أقسام كثر. وهو أقسام كثر. That he says, and anything which drops below the rutbah of hasan is da'if, and it is many a category involved in that. Okay. نعم المسند أو المسند وهو ما اتصل سنده إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. Right, okay, what does musnad mean? We covered this in the previous lesson. Musnad.
لغة أو اصطلاحا?
In this istilahan. Or lughatan, if you want. Lughatan.
Lughatan is just something that's when, like you lean on it, you rely against it.
Okay.
You lean up against it. Musnad has two meanings. One is when you arrange all the hadith according to the companion that narrated it. And the other one is basically saying that there's ittisal sanad.
Right, okay, yeah, I mean, because really it's just وَهُوَ مَا اتصل سَنَدُهُ. It's just saying a hadith that the chain of which is connected back to the Prophet ﷺ. Some people have then debated that can you call a da'if hadith a musnad? Generally, many people have as well. So you even see وَإِلَيْهِ ذَهَبَ الْحَاكِمُ وَجَزْمَ بِهِ صَاحِبَ النُّخْبَةِ, that they, with the exception, some people like Al-Hakim and Ibn Hajar seem to say now that the musnad should really be something which is sound. Many other people have said, well, the chain is connected even though the chain is weak. I suppose that's a debate that, is it still connected if it's weak? Because in essence, those links don't exist. But at face value, it's a connected chain as opposed to a missing link in it, of an obvious missing link. Okay? Right. وَالْمُتَّصِل وهو ما اتصل إسناده مرفوعا كان أو موقوفا ويسمى موصولا أيضا وضده المفصول. So al-muttasil is a connected chain. Even if it goes up to the Prophet ﷺ, or whether it stops at the Sahabi, but it is still, the chain is connected. The chain isn't interrupted. Okay? Now, al-marfu'. What's the marfu'?
It reaches the Prophet.
Yep, something that goes to the Prophet ﷺ. So they say ما أضيف إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم خاصة متصلا كان أو غيره, that something which is connected back to the Prophet ﷺ. Chain goes back. So if let's say we're quoting a hadith, yeah. Now here's a hadith. Now, if we say from Malik, عن ابن شهاب, عن سالم, عن Abdullah, عن Umar. Obviously Abdullah here being Abdullah ibn Umar. From Abdullah ibn Umar, from the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he said such and such and such. That is
more or less the same as Musnad.
Yeah, so that would be, you see, a musnad is a broad generic term, meaning that it is actually connected. It's going back. It is muttasil. That it is actually. So this is why sometimes some of these terms, there's a huge overlap in them. There's nothing really, sometimes significantly different.
The musnad, in the sense, it can go back to a companion rather than a prophet or whoever. Basically, it's just connected. That's all.
Usually, it's going back to the Prophet ﷺ.
Yeah,
The
but
musnad is.
specific to the
But
prophet.
marfu' is when they're saying, you see, usually you'll see this term a lot more used. Because when they say something it depends on the angle that they're coming from. When people say this is marfu', they usually are saying that for a reason. Marfu' means it's going back to the Prophet ﷺ. Now if I say that same chain from Malik, from it wasn't Nafi, but from Ibn Shihab, from Salim, from Abdullah, from Umar, and I stop there. Right, okay, the chain is still muttasil, is still a connected chain, but it's not going back to the Prophet ﷺ. It's not marfu'. When people say, oh, and this has been transmitted marfu'an, this has been transmitted marfu'an, what are they trying to say?
It's coming from the Prophet.
It's coming from the Prophet ﷺ. Why do you think they might say it like that though?
So that
If I say this and it's come in a hadith, وَقَدْ وَرَدَ فِي الْحَدِيثِ مَرْفُوعًا.
is it because, for example, you can narrate from the Sahaba by assuming that they've got that from the Prophet. So this way, it's actually definitely coming from the Prophet.
But why do you think, yeah, you're right, but why do you think people might be writing like that in some texts? They're saying, oh, and this comes in a hadith marfu'an, or and here it has been transmitted marfu'an.
Does that hadith have variations?
Exactly, because some people somewhere have posited the question that it goes back to the Sahabi, it doesn't go back to the Prophet. As you can see, Ibn Asim al-Andalusi there has spoken. The thing is, when somebody says it like that, like, oh, this has been transmitted marfu'an, they're coming at it from an angle that they're already anticipating. That some people, oh, you're going to probably question this, assuming that I'm talking about like a mawquf riwayah, but it's actually transmitted marfu'an as well. Because usually that hadith may have many variations which are mawquf, which are not marfu'. And they may be more popular even. So this is why it's the angle that people are coming from. When somebody says it's marfu', it doesn't necessarily mean that they're debating it's sahih. They're hoping it's sahih, but usually when they're coming at you with, oh, this is marfu', it's usually another question that they're trying to deal with, that you might have an expectation that, oh, that's mawquf. And they're saying, no, this is actually transmitted marfu'an. Okay. So, na'am.
If a hadith chain is marfu', can it be munqati as well?
No. I suppose, but I mean, generally the assumption would be, See, when the opposite of the muttasil, the munqati is the muttasil, which is what we already said, the chain being connected. You see, from that perspective, a person would be arguing about the chain. Like somebody is trying to argue the sihha of it. So if somebody said, where you're reading in a text, oh, but that's munqati. That text is, that hadith is munqati. A person might respond by saying, no, it's actually transmitted muttasilan in this book. He wouldn't respond by saying it's transmitted marfu'an, because that's not the answer to that question. Like that's obviously dealing with an entirely different question. Could a hadith, technically a hadith that is marfu' means it's being transmitted back to the Prophet, so technically it could be munqati, that they could be much before. So let's say Imam Malik is transmitting, but Imam Malik misses, and we're going to see what mu'dal is and stuff like this, where a person is missing earlier on in the chain, but I'm quoting the rest of the chain correctly and I'm taking it back to the Prophet ﷺ, so it is still marfu'. But being marfu' doesn't necessitate it being sahih. Okay, so it's more about what's your point in saying it. So when somebody says, oh, this is munqati, they're attacking the chain. So you would probably, or the person would respond by saying, oh, but it's also muttasil in this book. It's connected in this book. You wouldn't respond by saying it's marfu' in that book, because that's not it doesn't make much sense. Okay, mawquf. Well, we've done kind of mawquf. So what is mawquf?
Narrates from a companion.
Yep. Right. Now, the interesting thing, he says, let's read his definition. وهو المروي عن الصحابة رضوان الله عليهم قولا أو فعلا أو نحوه متصلا كان أو منقطعا ويستعمل في غيرهم مقيدا فيقال وفقه فلان على عطاء مثلا ونحوه. Okay, now it's interesting. So basically a mawquf is a hadith or an athar that just goes back to the Sahabi. It can be in his actions, it can be in his statements, it can be him saying something or him doing something. Now, the example is, let's say the statement of Sayyidina Umar, تفقهوا قبل أن تسودوا. Right, what does tasudu mean? Like from siyada. Acha. So before you become like a sayyid, a leader, so take knowledge before you reach that status. Now, when you look at that, mawquf, that's an example, that's from Umar. There's many statements from Umar radiallahu anh that then, because they're statements, they're going to be mawquf. Now, it can have two angles to it. Okay? It can be mawquf, but we're giving it hukm al-rafa'. Okay? And mawquf, but we're not giving it hukm al-rafa'. What do I mean by hukm al-rafa'?
So we're assuming that he's taken that from the Prophet.
Exactly. Now, right now, the thing is that this could be that assumption. Why are we having that assumption? It could be that he begins by saying, oh, we used to do this in the time of the Prophet. So although he hasn't said there that the Prophet said this, but there's an assumption. You've made a leap. There's right, that there's an assumption. It could be that he says that we used to be commanded to do this. But he didn't say who commanded him. We used to be forbidden from doing such and such. But he doesn't say who he's talking about. Or he says the sunnah was such and such. Is it because sunnah could also mean the linguistic sunnah? Like it doesn't have to mean, because at the end of the day, they were Arabs. They did used to speak, and this was their language. Remember, for them, you got to remember as well, for them, these words were not like just for us technical words only used for when we're talking about Islamic rulings. They had these words in everyday language as well. وَلِكُلِّ قَوْمٍ sunnatun wa imamuha, as the poet says. But the thing is, so they had this, it could be when they say, and the sunnah was such and such. Sunnah of who? Sunnah of your people, sunnah of your tribe, sunnah of your, sunnah of the Prophet. What are you talking about? The assumption many will give is that it's the sunnah of the Prophet.
Can it also be, is it something like when the Sahaba say something which they couldn't know, like about the afterlife or something, that's also assumed?
Yeah, this is also one of the things that people say, well, how else could he have known this unless he took it from the Prophet ﷺ? All of these are things which are mawquf, laha hukm al-rafa', but remember, it's not categorical. It can be challenged. So a clear example, give me a clear example that is challenged.
The one folding of the hands.
Allahu Akbar. That was the one. That he says,
Yumna.
he says, umirna, that we were commanded to do this, that we used to place our hand above the other hand. Now, then even the Rawi says that I believe that, he says, his thing, the actual wording is, he says, لا أعرف إلا أن يدمى ذلك إلى النبي. He says, I believe he intended by that the Prophet. How does that add strength to his statement?
Because it's a command from the Prophet ﷺ rather than some...
So it's obvious. So the person is saying, I believe that he intended by his statement, we were commanded. I believe that we were commanded, that I believe that he intended by that statement the Prophet. So it adds strength that, okay, so this is a marfu' statement. How wabil muqabil, and in the opposing direction, how does it add weakness to it?
He doesn't know.
There's no certainty.
Could have been anyone. If the word was common at the time.
True, it could have been any, but that's the question. But why does it add more? Why is there more of a question mark? But now that he's actually said it, I believe that who he would have meant by that is the Prophet.
He didn't specify.
Yeah, but this is one of the later rawis. So it's not the first rawi, it's the other one, saying, I believe that he would have been meaning, La arif illa yunma. I believe that is intended with it, the Prophet.
With
There's
some
real
criticism.
doubt. There's real doubt that it actually came around.
Exactly, and he's so early on.
Yeah.
So if he is saying that La arif illa yunma, that is, and he's using the sighatul majhul, the term that is, like an unknown term, like I believe that that's being taken back then to the Prophet, and he's so early on, that would mean that when people use such words, they don't always talk about the Prophet then. Otherwise, why would he have to say that? So even Ibn Hajar says in that thing, that this one statement of his kind of almost put water on the whole thing really, because if it wasn't for that, this riwayah would have been sound. As in, it is still sound by its chain. But is it a marfu' riwayah? He says that this statement kind of jeopardized the conclusivity of this statement, of this hadith. And that's in Bukhari. Anyway, so moving away, that's in argument whether qabd or sadal or whatever. But coming back to here. وَالْمَقْطُوعُ وهو الموقوف على التابعي قولا أو فعلا. Now, the maqtu', the thing is, sometimes they say the munqati' is a bit more of an elaborate, a generic term, which I think he is going to cover it next anyway. Right, that is talking about just something else we'll come to in a moment. This maqtu', he's saying when it stops with who? With the tabi'i. So it doesn't stop with the sahabi, it stops with the tabi'i. Then it is maqtu'. فهو المقطوع. Okay? And it can be, these things can be qawlan or fa'lan. what is the purpose of transmitting from the tabi'in like that? Fi'lan. Like that they used to do this. What is the purpose of that?
Could it be they took the action from the Sahaba?
Exactly. And also, it is from the principles of the school of Medina, it is from the principles of the school of Kufa that they consider, especially Medina, that the school of Kufa actually disagrees on this, but that they consider the actions of the tabi'een to be a hujjah as well, because they believe that their religious type of actions were only taken from the Sahaba, who were then taken from the Prophet ﷺ. It is a debate. I know generally that Abu Hanifa did not accept it. His famous statement about them, that he said, "Hum rijalun wa nahnu rijal," and so that they are men and we are men. Allah, mard tange wala. They are men and we are men. Wow, what a statement, though. That's what the mard one. That's a Bollywood thing. I mean, that's because Imam Abu Hanifa himself is debated to have been from the tabi'in, whether he is or not. There's huge debate about whether he actually did make the tabi'i list. Perhaps, maybe not, or whichever way you want to see it. He definitely didn't in terms of learning. Whether he did in terms of barakah or not is another debate. That whether he saw a sahabi, they all accept he never learnt from a sahabi because he only began to study at a later age himself. But he was still early. So in his time, many of the tabi'een were still in his time. So he's so to him, they're still contemporary people. And when people are contemporary and they're around, then it's all real, isn't it? It's not, it loses sometimes that halo effect. Because you see the real humanness of the other person. So as he said, hum rijalun. When they said to him, what about the statement of Fulan? Why didn't you take it? He was a tabi'i. He said, hum rijalun wa nahnu rijal. Allah, look at that. As Antara says, sakattu fagharra al-a'da as-sukutu. Allah. Says, just because I went quiet, he says, my adversaries were misled by my silence and fooled.
Sorry, just to ask, you said they can transmit an action. Obviously, does that have like a number of people doing the same action that makes it sound, or is it just one person?
No, I mean, it could just be one person. I mean, there could be multiple people, but some madhabs give legitimacy to it. Like as in they see this as a hujjah within the Sharia. Obviously, if this was a cross madhab debate, then it wouldn't carry weight with the other madhab, and that wouldn't be admissible in that debate then, because it doesn't carry weight with them. So with Imam al-Shafi'i and the Shafi'i madhab, who question even the fatwa of a sahabi to be a hujjah shar'iyya, they don't really accept it as a hujjah shar'iyya. And they have some very valid points actually on the arguments. What they consider is min bab al-tawjih. They say it's something which it sheds light and guidance, but it's not a conclusive shar'i matter. And you can see where they're coming from. So, whereas the other madhabs all agree on the fatwa of the sahabi being a hujjah for them, except the Shafi'iyya. But if you were to be having a discussion or a debate with the Shafi'i school, there wouldn't be any point in bringing the af'al of the Sahaba. I mean, you could bring it as min bab al-tawjih, but there's no point bringing them as isolated evidences because they're not really, according to them, it doesn't hold that weight. So, okay, al-Muqtadir وهو ما لم يتصل إسناده على أي وجه كان. So, what does that mean? Yeah, the hadith is by necessity cut off at some point. It is not at all connected. There's a missing link in the chain somewhere. Right.
Is this in contrast to Muslim?
This will be in contrast. Muttasil is in contrast to munqati'. So connected, muttasil, munqati', broken or yeah.
And Musnad?
Musnad, I suppose they would see. Musnad is a very generic term. When they say something is musnad back to the Prophet ﷺ, I suppose in a way they're usually using it to kind of generally, Allahu A'lam, but my understanding is they're trying to kind of show it as a marfu as well, riwayah. It's not usually, the debate is, this is the debate, that some people like I mentioned Al-Hakim and Ibn Hajar and some people, they said that musnad should only be used for terms for ahadith which are sound. So if you said that is a musnad riwayah, that it would carry weight in saying that it's a marfu and a sahih. But the problem with that is some other people, didn't agree with that definition. So it kind of, I suppose, because there isn't almost a unanimous understanding. But generally, that's how they use it. I suppose Ibn Hajar obviously is very popular in his presentation of things. Na'am. So Mursal. So وهو قول التابعي وإن لم يكن كبيرا قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ومنهما خفي إرساله. Right. Okay. Talk to me, people. What's a Mursal?
The ravis are not documented. They don't say specific.
Which one?
It's the tabi'i saying that the Prophet ﷺ said, but without the name of the companion who said it.
Exactly. So a Mursal is where arsala yursilu, to send, to kind of let something flow, to float in a way. You just let it go. And that's what the tabi'i has done. He's just let it go direct to the Prophet ﷺ without mentioning the Sahabi. Now,
They comment.
sorry, it does, there's quite a few marasil is the plural. There's quite a few marasil.
Can you also be that the tabi is missing and the sahabi is mentioned?
Right, but then it wouldn't be mursal.
What do we mean?
Then it would just be either munqati or something, it's got somebody missing in the chain. Now, let's give you an example. قال الشافعي أخبرنا مالك. He's saying أخبرنا مالك. In this it says Malik ibn Zayd ibn Aslam. I think what he meant to say is Malik an Zayd ibn Aslam. But anyway, Malik ibn Zayd ibn Aslam عن سعيد ibn المسيب أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم نهى عن بيع اللحم بالحيوان, that in this type of transaction of meat was forbidden, that there was a riba involved in, or if a person kind of had a transaction with is a live animal with meat and so on. And there's a debate around that. But anyway, this hadith, Sa'id ibn al-Musayyab is saying that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did this. Sa'id ibn al-Musayyab never reached the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Sa'id ibn al-Musayyab is obviously a great tabi'i though, considered the greatest by who? By Ahmad ibn Hanbal. Obviously one of the 7 dons of Medina that were known as the Fuqaha Sab'ah, the 7, you could say Magnificent 7, but you just can think of Jackie Chan's movie, so or was that Lucky 7? Was it? But anyway, the Lucky 7. Anyway, so the thing is, what they call the Fuqaha Sab'ah, the 7 heavyweights of Medina. Alright, and from all of them, the top, the most heavyweight of them all was Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib.
Still talking about Sab'ah,
Right, so the thing is, Sa'id, and he was also, I mean, he learnt from many Sahaba, right, who he kind of, but what was another key feature of his, when I say feature, I mean something about his life that gave him great access to hadith? He was Abu Huraira. He was the son-in-law of Abu Huraira. So you can see that proximity and that closeness to gain hadith. And he is also one of the principal, one of like, I don't know if we can say like the founding fathers, but one of the key people that defines what becomes known as the school of Medina. So Imam Malik often follows in like his footsteps. He is obviously one of the Fuqaha Sab'ah anyway, the 7, heavyweights of Medina. But this is but he's an influential one that always, not always, but quite often Imam Malik is quoting and is always giving him preference. So that hadith is an example. Now Imam al-Shafi'i says that we don't accept any Mursal riwayah to be sahih because there's a person missing. The ruling generally is that the Mursal can be used إذا اعتضد بعاضد بأن يروي مسندا أو مرسلا من جهة أخرى, that if there was, let's say you had a musnad being transmitted and on the other angle you've got a mursal being transmitted, then if it's the same type of incident, then this mursal can be used. Okay, if you've got a musnad somewhere to back it up. I suppose that may be obvious from some point. According to the school of Medina, the Maliki school, and according to the Hanafiya, Mursal is a hujjah anyway. They accept Mursal. In fact, the Hanafiya go to the extent to rate it in their usul fiqh books above a musnad. So they go, you think you've seen complexity. They say, you think you know what confusion is. Wait till you see the stuff we're on. So they in their usul fiqh books rate a mursal above a musnad. So everybody's kind of like, everybody's really perplexed at how do you figure this? Because whilst they're trying to say this isn't even acceptable, these guys say, forget acceptable, it's above a musnad.
And it's itlaq, they accept it.
They not only do they accept it above in the usul fiqh books. It may be a matter of debate among some, but in the usul fiqh books they say it's above a.
Why did they do that? Is there a reason? There must be a reason.
Yeah, there's always a reason when it comes to, and it's not what you might think.
Pakistani ancestry.
It's not the nabidh that was going around. Everybody was just passing a cup around, right? But this, go on then, Fahad, go on then, right? So look at this. This is so. Why they say that is, here's the logic. It's actually quite interesting. What they say is that when the tabi'i, when he goes direct to the Prophet ﷺ, then he's taken the burden of responsibility for you. So you don't need to check it. Whereas if he gave you the chain, or the person gives you the full chain, then you need to authenticate it, so the responsibility is on you to verify that the hadith is sahih. But when he just says, don't worry about it, the Prophet ﷺ said so, then he's taken the responsibility. So now you can just relax and say, look, well, the responsibility is all yours. Wow. So that is actually the argument behind it. So obviously the Malikiyya obviously don't agree with them on that point, but they agree with them that Mursal is acceptable. Because the Malikiyya see it from the point that a tabi'i is obviously a great person and it's a matter of trust. They're not saying it's above a musnad. Obviously they don't make that leap of, they lacked a bit of that confidence in saying, going that far, but they said that it is still acceptable. Imam al-Shafi'i, he rejects marasil. Except, then he kind of has this caveat, which is almost a bit of a contradiction, because he says, except the marasil of Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib, because I had them verified and they were all sound. Right, but the thing is, well, in a way, you see, you kind of defeat your principle by saying that. Because you saying, well, this person was okay because you had trust in him, is just as Malik knowing those of Medina saying that these people have said it, so it's fine. So you either go with trust or you go with objectivity. You can't have it both ways.
Is there like a number of, so for example, if there's like one hadith in this Mursal, would it matter, or does it have to be like a certain amount of, so for example, if there's like multiple different people saying a similar thing, then that would be stronger for an action, or is it?
I mean, but according to the Shafi'i view, the lens, it wouldn't be a hadith if it's not connected. So, although it may be points of consideration, but it's not hujjah shar'iyya unless it's a musnad. They want a musnad riwayah.
But in the Maliki or the Hanafi.
Oh, according to the Malikiyah, the chain doesn't have to be connected at all like that. But it has to. But it's
how many, for example, say you've got like from the Tabi'in, he says something and there's an action based on it. Would that one person be enough, or does it mean okay, we're going to have a certain number before we would do?
According to the Maliki madhab, they do say. I mean, I think they slightly exaggerate the point of the Tabi'i in saying that his thing is a hujjah. They do say in the usul books, although how truly they mean that, Allahu A'lam, but I mean they do say in the usul books that his thing is a hujjah. So it doesn't have to be like a democratic thing, like with numbers. It can be what, at the very least, it's a precedent. It's a legal precedent
So there's
within the
potential
Sharia.
for someone to use it.
Exactly, for somebody to build on it and to use it. Right, now, okay, here's another point. What is the... Let's say there's a Sahabi. Let's say there's many Sahaba who perhaps did not hear all the ahadith from the Prophet ﷺ. Is that true? Yeah, there's going to be many Sahaba who learnt things through other Sahaba. Is that not true? So when they say the Prophet ﷺ said this, but they probably never heard it directly either. So why is that not a Mursal? Because a Sahabi is still missing.
But you wouldn't know.
True, we wouldn't know, but let's say we do know. Well, let's impose the hypothetical question, because we know it would have occurred just through our logical understanding. It would have been necessary for it to have occurred. Why then, how do we bypass that dilemma?
But then they only say, I submit to so and so, say that the Prophet said.
So,
You find that in chains. One Sahabi.
but let's say, for example, Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu is transmitting something, but we know he came to the Prophet ﷺ in the year 7 Hijri, but he might be talking about an incident a bit before, so we know he may have heard this from someone, but he's not saying who in that hadith. This isn't still grouped as a Mursal. Why?
Is it because it was definitely from a Sahabi and they're all trusted?
Is it because the Prophet
That's the answer. The Sahaba have a category called that as-sahabatu kulluhum udul. The Sahaba are by their category all certified as just. That Allah says in the Quran when addressing those who are the companions of the Prophet, radiyallahu anhum wa radu an. If Allah is pleased with them, then who is anybody that comes after? So they have their seal of approval from Allah, min fawqi sab'i samawat, from the heavens above. I don't use above in a literal sense there, just for the, no, just saying. From the heavens above, they have their seal of approval. Therefore, we don't need to approve them. Even if a Sahabi is transmitting from a Sahabi that's missing, it's still a Sahih and considered a Musnad al-Riwayah. So tell me, what question does this beg? I want you to even, see, that's the standard I'm raising you guys to. That not only do I want you to guess the answer, I want you to guess the next question that's coming up.
Could be like, for example, you could narrate the same, but it's not the same as saying like submit to Rasulullah. I heard exactly
Okay.
what the Prophet
But I mean, going back to our Mursal, what question does this beg? Well, we've just now learnt. It begs a question.
But when you said what you said, I thought the issue, this is about Adala, yeah? These companions are all
Sound.
Adul, right? So, but then we reject the Tabi'i's narration, not because we don't think he's
Sound.
adil, but because there may be a mistake somewhere.
Right. But what's the question? The question, raise the question. That is the question. That you're on it. So what's the question?
Oh, I'll let you say
Don't give us the answer. We don't
You
want
may.
You see, you're giving the answer to the question that should be coming. You're thinking 2 steps ahead. I'm training you too well. I need to tone you down slightly. Okay, this then begs the question, which is Mu'adh. Exactly. So what's our problem with Mursal? So what's your problem with Mursal? Mu'adh. Right. So what is the problem? Because if we're saying the Sahaba kulluhum udul, and Sa'id ibn Musayyib is transmitting from the Prophet ﷺ, so what if the Sahabi is dropped? But the Sahaba are all udul anyway. So what is the problem? Now the response.
Because himself isn't a Sahabi.
Okay, but let's say the Sahabi in the chain is missing, because this Tabi'i doesn't reach the Prophet, so the Sahabi is missing. But what's the problem? It doesn't matter which Sahabi it was, because Sahaba all accepted anyway. So what's the problem with accepting a chain where the Sahabi is missing?
But this entire scenario is hypothetical. That a companion may have narrated a hadith that he didn't hear directly, and instead he heard it from another companion.
No, that has happened. In many cases, the companions have heard from other companions. So come on, that's obvious. Obviously, where they're living around the Prophet,
Yeah.
then not all of them are
but-
there all the time
No,
when
I
something's going
understand
on.
that,
Yeah.
but in a chain, well, we assume, well, this companion may not have actually heard it himself directly. He
But I mean,
may
that-
have heard it from a-
That has occurred many a times. That has occurred. But the thing is,
So we accept
coming
that,
back to the Mursal, this question here now.
There can't be a problem.
But there is a problem
Remember-
because Mursal hadith isn't considered by the muhaddithin to be sahih
No,
because
is it
it's not
because-
musnad. So why is it not musnad? Why is it not connecting when it doesn't matter who? Like we could put any sahabi name in there. They're all udul. So what's the problem?
So memory or things like that. So they can be just but have other
Who the
Does
Sahaba?
it depend on who the Tabi'i was? Or it doesn't?
What you mean is in whether he met that Sahaba. He met the Sahaba or something.
Or he's
Expand. What are you?
Like say for example,
Should we play Marco Polo?
he
Marco Polo.
Say-
Marco Polo.
he narrated a hadith from a companion, but he never met any of the companions that's connected to that companion. So he's narrating a hadith.
But the companion's main name isn't mentioned, so you wouldn't know.
No, but you know, when they do rijal, they know who they met or they learned from.
I think what you may be saying.
What do you want
Ni-
to say?
Ni shwa shamma. What are you saying? Right. I think what you may be saying is, how do we know that he is actually transmitting from a Sahabi? What if he's transmitting from another Tabi'i?
Didn't he say, oh,
But why? Like, what it could be that he's heard from another Tabi'i, you heard from a Sahabi. It's not necessary that he's not saying, by the way, I heard this from a Sahabi, I'm just not mentioning his name. It could be that he heard it from his contemporary, somebody studying with him. So because of that, we don't have that certainty, whereas the Sahabi was in the time of the Prophet. So even if it was from another person, it was from a person with the Prophet, so it was a Sahabi. So it bypasses that point. Okay, so that was the question that was coming next, the answer to which Doc had already told. Just the question he wasn't too sure on, but he provided the answer. Okay, so right now, وهو al-Mu'dal. Right, the Mu'dal is وهو ما سقط من إسناده اثنان فأكثر ويسمى منقطعا أيضا فكل معضل منقطع ولا عكس. So what is a mu'dal? For those of you who understand Arabic.
Two people missing from the chain, so it's munqati', but it's quite severe munqati'.
Yeah, so it's basically broken. It's munqati', but it's it's more strongly broken. As in, there's at least two links in the chain missing. Okay? So if Abu Musa al-Mazari here was, for example, transmitting Yarwi an Abihi from his father. But there were two people missing in the chain. Like, let's say, so the thing is, you've got like not just one person, and they don't have to be in the same place, by the way. They don't have to be two people consecutive. They could be separate. They could be together. So that does happen. Does it have to stop at two? What if there's three people missing? Would we still call him Ma'dal?
From his definition,
He says فأكثر.
Oh.
فأكثر. Yeah.
Okay.
So a munqati hadith is what by definition, Mu'adh? A munqati, a broken chain.
Two people, more than two people missing.
No, one missing.
Munqati is
It just means
at least is broken. It fits on the least of its definition, which is at least one link broken in the chain. That's because the definition, the word munqati means broken. By the very least of its definition, it has to be broken in one place. Correct? Right. So it could include more, but by the very least, it is usually just broken in one place. A mu'dal is something that is broken in at least two places.
So Mursal is specifically saying that the Sahaba is not mentioned.
He's not saying, but he isn't mentioned. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's it. So, but a mursal is not necessarily mu'dal. It doesn't mean two people are missing.
No.
Yeah, so mu'dal is something that is two people are missing, okay? So as an example, let me give an example. Imam Malik says in the Muwatta, Balagani an Abi Huraira. It has reached me. Balagani, reached me. It has reached me. These are known as the balaghat, not the blag, not the blagat, the balaghat of Imam Malik. So the balaghat of Imam Malik are the things that he says have reached me. In the where he says he's reached me, Imam Malik goes straight to the Prophet ﷺ sometimes. So it doesn't. So it's in fact quite often when he's saying he's reached me, he's saying it's reached me from the Prophet. Which reached me from this person. So that's Imam Malik says that's reach. He goes, what's your reach? Forget that. In his Kitab al-Ilm, Imam Malik says, Balagani an Luqman al-Hakim. He's reached me from Luqman al-Hakim. And looks at what's your reach? You can reach. That's what you call network coverage. So the thing is, balaghat. So Imam Malik says he's reached me from Abu Huraira that the Prophet ﷺ said, Lil mamluk ta'amuhu wa kiswatu bil ma'ruf, that a servant has his rights in food and clothing and so on. But this hadith is mu'dal. There's at least two people, at least. How do we know there's two people missing in that chain?
Bypass two generations.
Exactly, there could be more, but by the very least there's two. So from Imam Malik, from a Sahabi, there have to be two. It has to be mu'dal. Okay. Now, in other than the Muwatta, Imam Malik, this hadith is actually connected. That it's from Malik, from Muhammad ibn Ajlan, from his father, from Abu Huraira. Okay. So these hadith do end up being connected in other narrations. Al-Mu'allaq. What is the suspended? Excellent. المعلق is وهو ما حذف من مبتدأ إسناده واحد فأكثر. Anything that has from the beginning of its chain, it has one or more missing. Usually mu'allaq is with just usually it's like there's no chain to it. It's just a hadith there. So it just says what are the popular mu'allaqat? Not the poetry mu'allaqat of Bukhari's. So Imam Bukhari, whenever he begins a chapter, he has several ahadith just as almost as like subheadings. So it says, okay, chapter of, for example, wudu is like this, and then he'll just have a saying of, let's say, Ibn Abbas saying the Prophet did this, and then the hadith begin. So these one or two that he puts in the beginning are known as mu'allaqat. They're just suspended. There's no chain to them. So, I mean, how are you supposed to know whether they're sahih or not? That's the thing. Now,
so from the beginning of the chain for it to be mu'allaq.
the actual definition he gives here, وَهُوَ مَا حُذِفَ مِن مُبْتَدَئِ إِسْنَادِي وَاحِدٌ فَأَكْثَرٌ. From the beginning of the chain, one or more are missing. But popularly, when they're found, usually they're just entirely suspended. But that's what he gives. Okay. والمعنعن. Right. وهو ما أتى فيه بلفظة عن كفلان عن فلان وهو متصل إن لم يكن تدليس وأمكن اللقاء. نعم. Talk to me, people.
So in the chain, I missed the last bit, but in the chain the word an is used and it's connected
It is connected. So
Rather than
an means what in Arabic?
from.
From, yeah, like on the authority, like this person, from this person, anhu, from him, like that. So when you're transmitting something, you say, oh, an, I heard it from, like that.
Oh, but there could be tadlis in it.
Yes, so we're going to come to that now. So when you see a chain, most ahadith are probably transmitted like, or many, let's say many ahadith are transmitted like this. An fulan, an fulan, an fulan, an fulan, anin Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What is the problem with mu'an'an? And that's why it's called, by the way, mu'an'an. Okay, it's a bit difficult, you can practice it. Mu'an'an, okay? So, what is the problem with mu'an'an?
It's
Or what's the potential for problem with mu'an'an?
I was going to say it's very general, so you're just saying it's from such and such, but it's not saying that you heard it directly.
See, that's the problem. How do you know that the person isn't blagging slightly? Or he isn't missing people out? Because when is he lying? Like if Maz said, Doc said something and I just say, Doc said this, leave him out. Have I lied? I haven't lied. I'm saying the truth. But I've just decided to leave a person in between out of the chain of transmission. Why might people want to do that?
To elevate their own status. In the
Elevate their own, and also more importantly, elevate the chain and the hadith. Because it might be that our learned friend here, al-Mazari, falls short on some of the conditions, God forbid, right, of some of the conditions of probity or something. So if I was to go direct, but the problem is I haven't heard this direct. But if I was to just leave him out, I haven't lied, but I've gone direct to the source, quoting him, implying to the listener that I've heard it from him. But I'm just going an. So, but generally, mu'an'an, the perception, what is the common, when you look at it, the common understanding, is it muttasil or munqati'? It is muttasil. It is connected generally by perception. Unless you have fear of tadlis. Now this is tadlis. وَهُوَ مَكْرُوهٌ, obviously something which you shouldn't do. لأنه يوهم اللقاء والمعاصرة بقوله قال فلان وهو في الشيوخ أخف. Now, okay, so he's just given the definition of it here. The thing is, tadlis actually comes from the word to cover something up. Dallasahu. That you kind of like, you're trying to make something, I don't know, trying to cover up and camouflage some defect that is present. Now, when you first learn about it, you might think, what the hell? Is that even allowed? Like, how can you do? Because it sounds like, obviously, there's ulterior motives, or it sounds like, but yet there have been some very big muhaddithin and scholars and people of transmitters who have been from the mudallisin. Any coming to your mind? Don't they say about Sufyan al-Thawri used to do tadlis, and a few, there's like so many, there's books written on mudallisin, but the thing is, tadlis is of two categories generally. It might be of more, broadly speaking, they put it into.
We were talking about last time of Imam Bukhari, when he said Qala Hisham, and then Ibn Salah and Ibn Hajar said he said Qala, he's missed out to that Al-Hasan bin Sufyan, but Ibn Hazm criticized that somebody.
That's Ibn Salah says that, doesn't
Ibn Salah. So because Ibn Hazm criticized Imam Bukhari, said Qala
but he
Qala
never.
Hisham.
Yeah, so they're saying he's trying to imply Tadlis.
Yeah, and then Ibn Salah says, yeah, he has missed somebody out. It's Al-Hasan bin Sufyan.
But I think some people have questioned that has he missed him out or not, but you're right. But the Imam Bukhari, if he is doing that, he's doing an ultra sly one, in the sense that, like he's just saying this person said without even saying from him in the normal way. Like he's just beginning by saying قال فلان حدثنا on him, from him. That hadith is obviously the one on music. Now, and that's because that is the only soundest, and the reason why he may have done that is perhaps he wanted to demonstrate the impermissibility of music. And that was probably the only one he could find as strong enough to squeeze into the Sahih, because he had tight rules for his Sahih. But the problem was, he was hearing it from somebody who was maybe not. So he does a...
Isn't that... I'm not saying anything bad. I'm just
But
saying,
isn't that quite
doesn't that
sneaky?
sound dodgy? Yeah.
It sounds dodgy, doesn't
You're
it?
just trying to...
It is Tadlis and the word dodgy are like... But the thing is that, you see, Tadlis jeopardizes a chain. Because this is why if a person is known, like if he's from the Mudallisin, or they've got databases in books of who the Mudallisin were, because they were caught out. So the Mudallisin are in books and known as Mudallisin. So if a Mudallis, even though he may be a pious person, transmits something as an fulan, it's straight away. Acha, theek hai. Okay. I stand corrected. Layla's corrected me. Right, it's there's 2 categories of Tadlis. Okay. Acha, theek hai, aa raha hu.